All right, let's get down to business on a Wednesday. Maize and Blue reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football and basketball. And we've got football and basketball to talk about. How about that? It's that time of year, and a month from today, the football team starts spring practice, and then 2 months from today, they'll have their spring game. So we count these things down. We're all would I just fast forward right to when's the first game, the last day. Actually, there's 31 days in August. Would I fast forward to August 30th for the opener right now if I had that chance? I'd be tempted to, because I like football just like you, but I don't want to. I don't try to live the days and try to embrace. We haven't even got to spring yet, so trying to fast forward everything else. I'll just take them as they come. I've learned, just to be present, enjoy today, but we can look forward to what's on the horizon. It probably ticked you off. It just kind of ticked me off of the college football expansion talk already, college football playoff expansion talk. I'll have a word or two on that. We'll peek ahead. Michigan State played last night against Purdue, and now Michigan and Michigan State will collide Friday at the Chrysler Center with first place in the Big Ten on the line. We'll have a few thoughts on Michigan basketball. We're going to start with Michigan football. And as always, if you're out there, we're one of these shows that I know people like to get into the comments and talk amongst themselves, but I like to hear where people are at with Michigan football, and I include those in the show. And so, go ahead and fire away. You got a question, you got a comment, you got something that you're looking forward to, you have something that you think that is worthy of discussion, go ahead. Put it in there, and we'll see where you're at. Now, I just thought about some predictions thinking about this team. Now, Chip Lindsey was on the MGO Blue, the Michigan's new offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, was on the Michigan Home podcast. And I was just reading the transcript over on the Maize and Blue review. And when he got to Bryce Underwood, he called him humble and driven. Humble and driven. Those are two nice things to think about when you're thinking about Bryce Underwood. And I'll take any little morsel, any little crumb of what anybody has to say about Bryce Underwood. In fact, let's see. I put humble and driven. That's what I like to see. Let's see how fast I put it up there. That's what Michigan's offensive coordinator had to say about Bryce Underwood coming in. We'll have some thoughts on Bryce Underwood coming in here straight ahead, but I looked at all of the different transfers, Michigan pulling in all the different transfer players out of the portal. I picked a player on offensive defense that I thought out of the portal would be the biggest star, they have the biggest impact next year for Michigan. I also looked at the recruiting class and did the same thing. Who's going to make the biggest impact as a freshman on the offensive side, on the defensive side? And then I looked at the overall team. And this team needs, they have to have playmakers. Every team does. Can you get those explosive playmakers? Who are going to be the playmakers? Who's going to be the offensive MVP? Who's going to be the defensive MVP? That's what I put together, something to think about a little bit as we head through this freezing cold rest of the month of February. Well, the biggest impact transfer on offense, and this could be, when I'm making these predictions, part of it, this is what I hope it's going to be. Also, I think that this is what Michigan needs. And also, I do think that this is going to happen. Jim Scarcelli's been, talking with his friends in coaching circles and, former players and all of that. And he had some good things to say about McCulley, the big wideout that Michigan's bringing in. It's one of the things you think about with what Michigan has lost as with receivers, and then what they need. They really need a big time playmaking wide receiver, and this is the pick. I think you want it to be McCulley. You need it to be McCulley. I think it's going to be Donovan McCulley, the biggest impact transfer on offense. On the defensive side, the biggest impact transfer on defense, Michigan's got Payne, Damon Payne, that they brought in. He went to Belleville, and then he was down at Alabama. He comes in along with Trey Williams, who was at Clemson. They got Troy Bowles, who was at where's he at? Georgia. I thought about him. You get the Metcalf twins from Arkansas, and then you get a DB from Louisiana. I think maybe ultimately that DB from Louisiana, what we've seen the last 2 years, it takes a little time for those DBs. I think Bowles could be the guy. If you wanted to argue Bowles, that's going to be your pick. I went with Trey Williams. Michigan, I think they need Trey Williams. Again, they want Trey Williams, and I think it's going to be Trey Williams. He was productive at Clemson, and they need, as you know, the two guys that are likely to be gone in the first round, maybe in the top 10, certainly top 15. Mason Graham, top 10, maybe top 5. Kenneth Grant, maybe top 15, probably top 20. And so you get Trey Williams in there, and they need him to be a big-time player. And I'll put him down as the biggest impact transfer on defense. Now I went to the freshmen, and I think this is pretty easy. I think if we polled 100 Michigan fans on who would have the biggest impact as a freshman on offense this year, I think everyone would pick Bryce Underwood. Now, they've got contingency plans. My thoughts, this is my initial thought on Bryce Underwood after he committed, after looking at the schedule, after thinking about it. People say, what do you think about Underwood? How good's he going to be? When's he going to play? That. And instead of being like looking through all the quarterbacks down through history, the recruits that have come in that have been like the number 1 or number 2 guys, and say, hey, it's not a 100% hit rate, and there's a 30 or 40% chance that he won't be great. I don't think putting those numbers out there, and I've looked at those. I went back through Rivals of their. You can't really do it for the last year or 2 or 3, but you can. The previous 20 years. Take a look at who they thought was their number 1 and number 2 QBs, and not everyone hits. There's a bunch that did, but not everyone ends up being a first-round draft pick and everything else. So you do know that, but do I want to sit on here every time on a Michigan podcast saying, he's not a sure thing that he's going to come in here and be great? No, I don't want that. Michigan has put. I don't know if they haven't put all of their eggs. Like I said, they got a contingency plan, but they put a ton of money and resources, and I think that Bryce Underwood's the highest paid high school player ever. And so, yeah, I would, if I'm a Michigan fan, I'm sitting back and saying, this guy's the real deal. Let's just add playing time and let's just see it happen. That's been my approach. And then I would also, there's an honest answer here, and the honest answer is about when he plays. I say I hope that he just plays right off the bat. Why not? Why not hope that if you're a Michigan fan, then he just hits the ground running in for first game. It comes out of spring practice, and they're like, the kid's just different. I mean, he's 17 years old, but he's got everything. There's no reason to be holding him back. He's going to be the starter. I hope that's how the coaches talk about him instead of being like, well, what they probably are going to say is that, yeah, he's 17 years old. He's humble. He's driven. He's got a great arm, but he's got a lot on his plate. And, that's fine for coaches. We're not coaches. We're sitting back and saying, hey, hopefully this guy's just somebody that can handle it all. Knows the playbook in and out, in at 5 a.m., last guy leaving. All of his teammates love him. And, he's going to hit the ground running from game one. Now, that's my hope. If I'm making a prediction right now, right here, right now, and they haven't started practicing, that's going to be in a month, and then we'll know more in 2 months from today. I don't know if we'll know everything. Maybe he'll come out maybe he'll wow everyone at the spring game, and it'll just be obvious. Like, oh yeah, obviously it's going to be Bryce Underwood against New Mexico on August the 30th. But we know they go to Oklahoma in week 2, then Central Michigan. Either of those spots, you can make a case, for Underwood. If you're not going to make a case for him, start the opener. You could make a case for him. Starting at Oklahoma, wow, that'd be a tough spot to start, but you could make a case for it. Central, I think that would be a one where, you didn't start the year after the Oklahoma game. That's a nice starting spot. And then the first Big Ten game is on the road at Nebraska. That seemed a little hairy to be starting, Bryce Underwood at Nebraska. So that's 4 games in, but then Michigan has a bye week. And then they come home for Wisconsin. That's my spot. Week 5, week 6 in college football, but week 5 for Michigan, that's when I think Bryce Underwood will start for U of M. And he is my pick to have the biggest impact out of the incoming freshmen on offense. On defense, there's a couple ways you could go. I went to the NOB, Nathaniel Owusu Boateng, as having the biggest impact. There's some DBs, there's some safeties, there's what's his name? Nathaniel Marshall, you could pick there. He's more of an edge. I see a clearer path to playing time. And the NOB, that's why he is my selection. There's a couple very highly rated defenders, and you do look, at least where I'm sitting right now, which is in the middle of February, I'm going to say the NOB on defense for me. Now, when you think of playmakers and MVPs for the entire team, who is it going to be? This opens it up on offense. Who's Michigan's most valuable player going to be? How often does anybody pick a lineman? Not very often. You might have picked Colston Loveland, and you probably would have been right, if you'd have picked him last year as a tight end. And, as much as I think you like Marlon Klein and you like Hogan Hansen, I don't know if you're ready to pick one of those guys as the MVP of the team. So it came down to 3 players. 1, Bryce Underwood. You're always looking at the quarterback. And if Bryce Underwood was the MVP of the Michigan offense, well, that would just be great news for Michigan. Well, that would be, you do cartwheels. That's what you hope. That's what that would, I think, mean a good season for Michigan. Obviously, good season for Underwood. But I did not pick Underwood. I went to the running back position. So it came down to Justice Haynes, the running back from Alabama who transferred in. He was also under consideration for biggest impact in the transfer portal and offense. But I'm going to go with the big time player from the ReliaQuest Bowl, who had 23 carries and 100 yards, Jordan Marshall. That is going to be my pick for Michigan's MVP on offense in 25 as we sit here in the middle of February. Jordan Marshall. I don't know if I feel the strongest about that one, but he's my pick. Again, I think, you got 3, 4, 5. You got to pick somebody. You can't say, oh, I'm going to pick 4 or 5 guys. No, you got to pick one, and my pick is Marshall. It felt a lot easier on defense. Michigan's defense, their best player is Derek Moore. And Derek Moore was part of Michigan in that first quarter where they took the lead on Alabama, and it was number 8 who was in there on the 4 and out, on the first play fumble, on the interception putting pressure, the fumble again, all of that. Derek Moore was there. I'll have Derek Moore as the MVP on defense. Let people think about that. But if you're just joining us, let me go ahead and give those to you back pretty quick. Biggest impact transfer on offense, McCulley, the wide receiver from Indiana. Biggest impact transfer on defense, the tackle from Clemson, Trey Williams. Bryce Underwood, biggest impact freshman on offense. NOB, Nathaniel Owosu Boateng, the selection there. Michigan's MVP on offense, Jordan Marshall. And their MVP on defense, Derek Moore. Those are the picks. That's how I see it. Let's get to some other college football news and then basketball straight ahead. Now, I would like to urge you want more Michigan content. You can't do without daily updates on Michigan and what they're doing in the recruiting realm, how they're doing on the hardwood, basketball, recruiting there as well. Well, it's my time to tell you to join the Maize and Blue Review. And you can get instant access today by going to michigan.rivals.com. We'd love to see you over on the Den, which is a posting board there with like-minded Michigan fans who talk about the Maize and Blue all day and all night. Now, this just happened this week. And I suppose I should give a shout out to AJ, who came in and said the Big Ten and SEC are trying to take over college football. Your thoughts? And I was like, well, I'm not for them taking over college football, but Ross Dellinger put a story out this week that says the Big Ten and SEC want to expand the college football playoff and add multiple automatic qualifiers. So there's 2 pieces: expansion. It's at 12 right now. They want to go to 14 or 16, and then they want to add multiple automatic qualifiers for their own conference. Sure. And then the other things that he put in there, a reimagined league title game. SEC-wise, they'll be like the Big Ten. They'll go to 9 game schedule in the SEC. It's just 8 now. And then they will also pit Big Ten and SEC teams against one another in a scheduling package. So when you see all this, sure, an SEC 9-gamer sounds positive. What do we really care about that? But I mean, you see a lot of times when people are complaining about schedules, you'll see that the SEC, they'll play like 4 easy teams, or they'll play like 1 hard one, and then they'll play 3 easy ones. And then the Big Ten, someone will play, 2 easy ones, and then they'll always be like, oh yeah, the Big Ten, or Michigan specifically. And this gives it a little bit more I think is a little more fair when you're analyzing the teams. But who knows? The proof's in the pudding when it comes down to looking at who those teams are going to be, and then a league title game. I think if you're, I don't know, say you're an old timer. I guess I'm an old timer. You can say, because I love the tradition, but I've also liked the tweaks, and I like big games. And you have to ask yourself, what do you really like about college football? And hanging on to, I love to have a Big Ten champ. Having a Big Ten champ, and Jim Scarcelli and Jerry Diorio, Jonas. Those guys. They got rings from being a Big Ten champ. And it means a hell of a lot to them. And, having a championship ring, I get that. But when you have 18 teams and you're not playing everyone, and then you get in there, and this year it felt like that's not really that as big of a deal as it was winning the conference championship. So reimagining it, yeah, I don't mind that. I don't think most people do. I'm just speaking for myself because there's always people that are like, I just wish we went back to Rose Bowl tie-ins. I mean, they're not going to do that. So, you have to pick and choose, I guess, your battles. However, going to a 14 or 16 team playoff, to me, this is too many, too soon. We've just had 1 year of a 12-team playoff. Can we let this thing breathe a little bit? Can we let it breathe a little bit? Like, again, I like the changes and, tweaks with college football. I like going to a 12-team playoff. But even before they played the 12-team playoff, they're already like, let's go to 16. It's like, hang on. Let's watch it a couple years. Now, they're not talking about their meeting this week. They're not going to change it up for this upcoming year. But in 26, just 2 years. I mean, how about they sit around and say, let's go for 4 or 5 years before we start, we're going to automatic qualifiers, expand to 16. Like, what are we doing here? Well, it's the money that is sitting out there. We know that you're sitting here watching me talk about Michigan football in February. People love college football, love Michigan football. They'll pay hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to go to the games. And there's nothing like going to the games, tailgate and all that, everything. So you pay hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to go to the game. You're doing the same thing on your TV, for your TV, your monthly packages that you have to throw down there. In addition, you're also maybe paying the players, right now, if you're going – I want Michigan to get a 5-star. So you're throwing some money in there. I mean, the money is there. So this is basic greed and capitalism. Those kind of two things combined at once. And the Big Ten and SEC are the big dogs. And, they're going to want to take it. They're not sitting around saying, what's best for the game? What's best for college football, this game that we love? These guys are like, how much money can I make? How much money can I put in my pocket? How much money can I get for the university, which in turn they're going to give me bonuses? How can I gobble up all of the cash as a conference? Sure, student athletes. I mean, people don't even talk about student athletes anymore. It's all like, it's much closer to, this is the NFL, damn near just like the NFL, than any kind of, at least talk. It used to be at least talk, even though it wasn't really like that, student athlete, but you don't hear. I mean, even if you do, I would imagine over the next month or two, Ward Manuel, Michigan's AD, he'll do some kind of interview or something. He'll say like, well, our student athletes, and everybody's like rolling their eyes. It's capitalism. It's greed. The question that I have, like, so it's too many too soon. I don't like it, all that, but could it ruin college football? Could it make it where I was like, had less enthusiasm? Because honestly, right now, and I do see, and people just like to have something to complain about. People like complaining. I know you know that, and some people say "Nah, they're done, things like that. But I don't know how much I believe them. But for me, I haven't lost the enthusiasm for college football over the last 20 years. There's nothing like when you're 10, 12, or you're a teenager, where the games are they're as big as anything in the world, and then you have to get into real life. But it's stayed still. It's awesome. It hasn't ruined it. Last year, nothing has been ruined for me. Paying to players has not ruined anything. The NCAA, none of that. It has not spoiled it for me. I haven't looked and said, "Oh, what would it take?" I think I don't want to know what it's going to take. Where I would be like, I'm done. I don't even want to watch it. I think about it. I think about the Pistons and Red Wings and Tigers, and the Lions. And the Lions always were in a great spot because people love football so much and they're so addicted to it. They didn't even care that they lost. They were the worst franchise for, all of our lives except for the last 2 years. And now everybody's sitting up on top and enjoying it, and they should. But if you go to the Pistons and Tigers, and the Red Wings too, for the last 10 years, if you weren't outright, and the Wings they're tanking, and the Pistons were straight up tanking. And I always said, like, you could tank for, once in a blue moon, you want to tank and go after, like, the year Wembanyama 2 years ago. That was a smart move. I know it's Troy Weaver and everything, but it was a smart move tanking for Wembanyama. If the Pistons would have been able to get him, there would have been a huge party. But it's been over 10 years that I've watched, and the Pistons, finally, you watch them, you're like, hey, they're like a playoff team. They're not bad to watch. They're kind of entertaining. But for the last 10 years, how many fans did they lose? You would tune in, and then you'd be like, oh, they're losing. And then you just turn it off. Or you might turn it out. If they lose at the end, you're kind of like, oh, well, that's good, right? They lost the game. A lot of times I would watch the first 3 quarters and I'd be like, well, I hope they lose, turn it off. It was the same thing with the Red Wings. I mean, that sucks. You say, when would be your your boiling point, or what would happen? If I was younger, I said, I'm always going to watch the Red Wings and Pistons and Tigers. But, after so many years of where they don't care if they're winning, if the fans want them to lose, the team wants to lose, it gets kind of, same thing over and over again. It gets a little, not a little, there's a lot of other things to do. I mean, so kind of like, hey, why don't I just go watch a movie? Even if it's a rerun, like, I know what's going on there. So that was a long way to say that I don't think college football is going to be ruined by any of this, but it's too soon, and there's too many games, and it could be more like the pros, and it's a lot like the pros now. But I like the pros, and I always thought it was dangerous. College football, was here, and pro football was there, but I like college football more. I always thought I liked college football more because Michigan Stadium, open air stadium, all the people, the pageantry, the colors, the uniforms, the bands. I thought that, and then Michigan was a winner. We had the Lions over there who were, miserable for every year for the last 2 years. And then but I still liked pro football, but it was dangerous. People used to always say, you don't want it to become like pro football because you could lose the specialness that is college football. And it felt a little bit with the games going, and I was in favor of the 12-team playoff. It still felt like it was played out. The way it was played out, it felt more like, even though we had more games, which I thought was going to be good, it had more of an NFL feel. Not completely ruined or anything. I'm not going back to 4 or going back to none, and let's vote for it. But that's what I think. Let me read some feedback, because we have some, and we'll see what the people have to say about what is happening and what's going on. So here we go. Kind of talking about adding North Carolina. Yeah, so I mean, this off-season topic of let's just add the teams and let's do all that, whatever else. I'm gonna even get a little tired of. Oh yeah, let's here are these 4 teams. I was looking, and you have the Big Ten with 18, and then the SEC, Big 12, and ACC. They all have 16. And there's been this thought over been a couple years that the Big Ten and SEC, they'll gobble up everyone. And then it'll be just like the AFC and NFC in the pros. Although the Big Ten and SEC already have as many teams as the pros, but they could they add another 8 apiece? And then would they just blow out these conferences? Would they just, forget the group of 5? Obviously, some of them, one of them would take Notre Dame on. And then, they just play it like then it would really be like the pros. Almost damn exactly like it. Now the 32 teams, I think college football always, even when you're sitting here and looking at it, you still think they would have 50, 60 teams. But that'd be pretty close to being an NFL model. Richard's still talking Big Ten title, and it usually means you beat Ohio State. Yeah, I don't have any problem with that. Like, if you think about it, that's what Bo used to always say. Bo didn't want to talk about a national championship because he couldn't do anything about it. What he could do is he could control what his team did, and that was winning the Big Ten. And if they won the Big Ten, well, then you could see after that, he didn't want to sell something to his kids. And I think this is a fine way, an old school way to think about it. But then the possibility of doing away the Big Ten, there'll definitely be some blowback. I mean, if you're a Michigan fan, and Richard is, I almost feel like he's, that's a 70s and 80s mantra from Michigan. We don't care about the national championship because we can't control it. Rip doesn't want to expand the playoffs. Too bad, Rip. They're going to do it. We've got Ferris looking ahead to basketball. Nothing wrong about that. Rip is talking about fans spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on sports, but not building infrastructure and an educational system. That's crazy. Well, yeah, and if you think about what we spend our money on, it for entertainment, it is crazy. Let's see. Mr. Martini is talking about the SEC pushing for expansion because Bama and Ole Miss were left out this past season. Yeah, I mean, sure they are, but they're also pushing for expansion. So, they want more teams. They always feel like their team can win the championship, but how short-sighted is like what Alabama and neither of those two teams deserve to be in. So, and if they had it to 16, then Alabama would lose 4 games and they'd lose one, some excruciating loss at the end of the year, and they'd still be out there like, oh, but if Alabama, maybe we should expand it. Maybe they should just always let Alabama in. That's the thing, and they're doing it with the basketball tournament too. It's always like the Monday after Selection Sunday. If you tune into Sports Talk Radio, everyone's giving their Final Four, but they'll also do a segment on who got snubbed. So there's always 2 or 3 teams. When you have all-star voting, there's always who got snubbed. Getting snubbed is always part of the conversation. So, don't lose as many games. Neither of these teams. They know that. They didn't get snubbed. But I think you're right. Talking 89 and Kendrick Lamar. A lot of people were at each other's throats over the halftime show. I hated the halftime show. Oh, you don't understand? I don't know. I felt like if I had a Kendrick Lamar quiz heading into the Super Bowl, like somebody would have said, are you a fan of Kendrick Lamar? I would have said, Yeah, I mean, I've got probably, I don't know, 10 of his songs that hit different playlists of mine. So I'm like, yeah, I think I'm a fan. But then when the halftime show went on, I think I only recognized like, man, I don't know how many songs he ended up playing. It was kind of a mashup, but definitely like 3 or 4 of them I knew. But then there were a couple I just sat there and I'm like, I don't know if I know this one. But so I kind of felt like I was on the outside looking in. That I don't get it. I didn't get it. I don't know. There's a million artists now. I mean, how much did everyone know every single song that guy was rolling out there? Yeah. College football has something the NFL never will. Well, I don't know. And what's that? The playing for your school instead of the city, because it used to be the amateur status, people would say. So that's it. All right. Mm, let's get to basketball because look, we got basketball questions coming in, and let's go to it. Let's start back because we had some right here, way up at the top before we were even getting into it. No, I can't find it. So let's see. Maybe I can. No. Let's get to it. Richard, does the basketball team have a chance at winning it all, or is that a next season thing? Yeah, I think that they'll probably have a better chance this season than they would next season because this year their transfer players hit and they've got stars. They brought in Danny Wolf and Mad Vlad Golden. Those are two of the better players in the country. They got Trey Donaldson. He's a star. Guy was a backup at Alabama. That's a hard thing to do, to be able to get these players and pick them from all different spots and then have them hit like that. So, yeah, I don't know about it being a next season thing, but do they have a chance at winning it all? I would say a small chance. I don't know, was it last week? Michigan was in the gambling realm. They were in the top 16 of teams that were considered that could win it all. My immediate reaction is probably not. I don't want to say never because stranger things can happen, but it'd have to be one of those like stranger things that happen. Like it would feel like, even though odds wise it's not like a 1 in 100, but it'd probably be less than that. But a 1 in a 50 chance, talking about winning it all. But the way I look at it, and you can if everybody's going to look at it differently with football, with Michigan football, there's rarely been, usually when a coach has his first year, you get like some free passes. Sharon, did he have, it felt like maybe a free pass, this year because it was his first year and he's got to put his stamp on the program. But most of the time, and I don't know, it went down. He had a free pass until, they looked terrible against Texas and then, barely beat USC and hanging on for dear life against Minnesota. The free pass went out the window at Washington. My point about football is it feels like sports life and death when Michigan football loses. The whole year's been a waste. People are mad. They want to, they want blood. They want to fire someone. And, the whole thing's going to crumble. And it's an intense pressure. And so many people are into it and just living and dying with it. And with basketball, in this first year with Dusty May, to me, your expectations go up because nobody was predicting Michigan would win the Big Ten, but this is like a free roll, a free ride. Just enjoy the season. And there's no, certainly if they, I could sit here and come up with all kinds of of early exits and no championships. And, you could look back and say, wow, there was so much promise in February. And I got beat in the first round. We got, beat in the first game of the NCAA tournament. That didn't really seem like much fun. So I get that. But for the most part, it's stress-free. They're playing for a championship in the regular season. They got a great chance to beat Michigan State coming up on Friday. They're playing them twice in 3 weeks. They'll have as good a chance as anyone to win the Big Ten tournament in Indianapolis, and then they can make a run. But a run, I think they could easily win 2 games. I could see them winning 3. I mean, it starts getting to where the Final Four, making that kind of prediction. I'm not ready to do that, but I think making a run, winning 2 or 3 games, I think that they could do that. And then I think it would be an excellent season. It's been an excellent season so far. Obviously, if they win the Big Ten or the Big Ten tournament, it has become a championship season. They do that. I heard Dusty. I hadn't seen many of these, but they tape him after the game in the locker room, and I saw this last one, and he was looking around the room and saying, guys, you have a chance to, play for something that you guys will always be able to come back, and for the rest of your life. And that's true. They put themselves in position. That's what I love about what has happened this year. These games are all they're all awesome now, big time games, and they got a chance to really do something there by winning it. But yeah, I'm not ready to talk about winning it all. I don't think so. Kenneth says this all major teams winning all 6. This is the best history in Michigan history. All major teams winning all 6. What are all 6? Football, basketball, baseball, hockey. What else are we extending that to? What are the next big 2? Softball? Wrestling? I don't know. Gymnastics. Ferris. Let's meet up at the spring game. I cannot make it this year. I wish I could. It was awesome meeting him. And you met Jerry last year. We'll see if I can get Scar out there. Yep, we will definitely be able to do that, guy. We'll be able to definitely do that. Or you could go meet Rip. And he's charging at his meet and greet $420 for his meet and greet. Mine's free. First goal, win the Big Ten. Then beat MSU on Friday. Just win that game. I would say if we're lining up the goals, let's go with beating MSU on Friday. That's goal number 1. Overall, so I don't think that you're going to be able to lose both games to Michigan State while, it's possible by, them dropping 3 games, but being realistic, Michigan's got to split with Michigan State to win the Big Ten. And because they're at home, you would think beating them on Friday is almost a must if they're going to win the Big Ten. Again, stranger things can happen there, but if we're looking at the path and how things normally go, then I would say beat MSU on Friday, and then win in the Big Ten regular season. It would be unbelievable, really, that they would be able to do that. And then we're on. Then it's Indianapolis. Let's see how many games you can win there, and then obviously the big dance. With the part about Dusty hopefully staying around. Is that it? Rip. Let's see. Kenneth is talking about Danny needs to hit those mid-range jumpers because he's open. Yeah, I don't feel like that is what this team needs to do to take it to the next level. I don't really know if he's open. How often is he just standing there in the mid-range? When he is standing there, he usually has somebody on him, and he can kind of post guys up. I've seen him do it on the baseline. I've seen him shoot from the free throw line extended, but he's either standing out at 25 feet at the 3-point line, or he's driving to the basket. So I would disagree that Danny Wolf needs to hit his mid-range jumpers. If I was looking for ways Danny Wolf could play better, I would say that finishing at the basket and making his free throws, those would be the two things. And I would look at his passing game. Those would be the three before I got to, dropping in some more long range bombs more than the mid range, making some more threes. So those would be the top four things I would have for Danny Wolf. Again, finishing at the basket, making his free throws, passing better, and then drop it in threes. Hey, look, he's their best player. He's got four things that he could do better. So that would be it. Overpassing. I haven't noticed that he is overpassed either. I noticed that he had a turnover right off the bat against Ohio State, which was his only turnover of the game, where he had both Gale and I think it was Vlad. And instead of throwing it, he left his feet, which is always a no-no. But then instead of throwing it to one of them, he kind of like threw it, in between the two, and it ended up being a bad turnover. But then he didn't have another one. So I don't know. He's an excellent. I don't know. He's a good passer. He's a good passer, and he's an excellent player. So I don't think he overpasses or he needs to hit mid-range shots. Those are not in my top five. Hadley's talking about, do I think Michigan will extend Dusty before the season ends or after that? And only Lamar, I know, goes by his first name. Oh, the only Lamar he knows goes by his first name is the great Lamar Woodley. Yeah, Kendrick Lamar Woodley. I'm more of a Woodley fan myself. Hadley, it goes back to with Lamar Woodley. Doug Karsh, who's the radio play-by-play voice for Michigan football, had an uncle, Rich, I think his name was. And I was at a party one time at Doug's, and Uncle Rich was there. I think it's Uncle Rich. And he was telling me, there's a kid that's a freshman at Saginaw. It's the greatest player that I've ever seen. I'm just sitting there listening to him like, oh, greatest player ever, huh? And he's like, he hits guys and throws them into the sideline, and the guys that are standing on the sideline get hurt. He's faster, bigger. He's the greatest ever as a freshman. Remember the name. You ever see Doug Karsh? Ask him about his Uncle Rick, and Lamar Woodley. Just couldn't have talked about him enough. And then I remember when Lamar Woodley was on his must have been an official visit or just a visit. He was on the outside of the meeting room, and I was out there too. And he was eating a hot dog. And I had told the story on the air, and the way that recruiting fans are so into it, are like, well, what was on his hot dog? All these people want to know what was on his hot dog, or did he look like he was enjoying his hot dog? And it actually did look like he was enjoying his hot dog. So that's it. As far as Dusty, look, I think that I don't really think it's a money issue. You say that, and then what Indiana could come up with, the making him the highest paid player or highest paid coach. He's on their radar somewhere. They got other coaches that they're going after and trying to get. At some point, if they keep striking out, they'll get the Dusty. But I think it's for Dusty, it's only about what's in his heart, But I think he's going to get a bump for what he's done. Yeah, I think he'll get an extra year. Where I really think it's going to help Hadley is that I think Michigan's NIL for basketball. It's not like football. Football's, they got Jolin. Does Jolin like basketball? When Jolin, threw over the $14 million or whatever it was to get Bryce Underwood, $10 million, $5 million, whatever it was. She said that What did she say? It hadn't been this bad since the guy that didn't wear headsets. She didn't say anything about, basketball really sucks too. Or I'll throw a couple million over to Dusty. But I would think that Dusty now, in addition to whatever, he's thinking, the 3 or 4 million that he's making, and, they bump it up maybe to 4 or 5. I think he's thinking, what can I get NIL wise? What kind of promises can I get for name, image, and likeness for Michigan basketball? And with the way that they're playing right now, with their position, I think he's going to get a lot. Let's go. Mr. Martini might be at the spring game. The spring game is on April the 19th, 2 months from today. We'll be there. I love it. We got a couple more. The Sparties are coming out of the woodwork. They're crossover fans that need 2 schools to formulate their anti-Michigan arguments. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen any of that. Antoine Jobert. Did I say Antoine Jobert? Did I say the Judge? The Judge, one of my favorite players of all time. I don't think I said his name, but he is. If I had to name my top 5 favorite Michigan basketball players of all time, I would put Antoine Jobert in the top 5, but number 1 would be very easy for me. I would pick Gary Grant, who was Antoine Jobert's running mate back for the Maize and Blue. Those guys were in the backcourt. The Judge and the General. The General being Gary Grant. Gary Grant would be number 1. I would pick Glenn Rice as number 2. I'll put Antoine Jobert as 3. I will put Guard Thompson as number 4 on that list. And if who would be number 5? I think about Trey Burke. I really like some Trey Burke. And I'm just going over who would be the 5th player that I would put on that list. I'm going to have to put Terry Mills on that list. Mills, who I saw play in high school, one of the greatest high school games that I ever saw. And then he went to Michigan as Mr. Basketball. I liked Terry Mills, and that was kind of the same way with Jobert. I was delivering newspapers as a youngster in Detroit, and I would read about Antoine Jobert, and he would shoot 50 times a game, and he was scoring. And I was like, it was like otherworldly. People were reading comic books. I'm reading the newspaper. I'm like, Antoine Jobert's Superman. That would be my 5. Here's a Brett Petway. Brett Petway shaved the winged helmet into his head, which was the sweetest haircut that I ever saw. It was really sweet. And then Petway one time threw a dunk down against Marathon Oil. Like they play these like exhibition games at the beginning of the year, and it was Marathon Oil, but it wasn't actually in the game. It was in the warm-up. Petway bounced the ball and threw it off. I don't know if he meant to hit the shot clock. It hit the shot clock, but he turned and did a 360 and then kind of windmilled it. And that was the best dunk that I ever saw live. Jason Richard did a 360 at Michigan one time. Kenneth is talking about Corpriel Manny Harris as being one of his favorites. I liked Corpriel myself. If I would have stayed where I lived in Detroit, that's where I would have gone, is to Redford when Manny was there. Let's see. No Fab Fivers. Yeah, it's tough when you have a top five. Yeah. What am I going to take out? You have a hard time when you have to list who's your favorite Fab Fiver because at different times. I think I've made a case for all five, but I think it's Jolin. To tell you the truth, you have Glenn Rice was not a Fab Fiver. He was there in '89. A Vaught onslaught was a great sign to see back in the day. The Georgia Peach, Brett Petway. Okay, your favorite Michigan basketball player of all time. I tell you, I like the team that they have this year, and I'm looking forward to the game on Friday. We will talk about the game on Friday coming up on Friday. In between now and then, I'll be over on the Maize and Blue Review talking about Michigan basketball, and we'll have the big game on Friday to take a look at. Thank you so much. We got Kenneth talking about going down to the park to see Chris Webber. I remember I think my friend, who I'm going to see tomorrow, went to the same junior high or grade school as Chris Webber. And I've seen the film of Chris Webber. I don't know if he's in 6th, 7th, 8th grade. He's got to be, 6'8". And there's not one kid that is 6 feet tall. And they're all and it's the most ridiculous thing that I've ever seen. Chris Webber, but he was the number one player in the country. He was the number one pick in the NBA draft. He's a Hall of Famer. So yeah, you say, what are these guys like? Derrick Henry, they show his film when he was in high school. Derrick Henry plows guys over nose and stiff arms them 5 yards back. Then they play his high school tape, and it was kind of the same thing. He's just running through everybody. He's bigger than everyone now. So you can just imagine being in high school. He would take 3 guys and he'd just wipe them out. Webber was like that in 6th or 7th grade, dunking on everybody. It was pretty crazy. That was it. Ferris with a hot take said the first Fab Five run was fun, but 89 was better. Well, I'm going to agree with you that 89 was better because they completed the task of winning the championship. So 89 will always be better than the Fab Five. But the Fab Five, for uniqueness and for taking over the college basketball world with 5 freshmen and going all the way to the championship game, it hasn't been touched since. So there was the entertainment part of it. But yeah, 89 was definitely better. Yeah, the old Bob Lee, who was a Seton Hall grad. I remember interviewing him when I was in Ann Arbor. He was gracious and everything. And he said, I just want to say one thing at the end. Ramil was not fouled. And he would say, go back and look at that tape. And then I did. And I looked, and man, it was talk about, we complain. Friday, everybody will be complaining. The number one thing people will talk about during the game on Friday is just how bad the refs are. We already know that the refs, they want Michigan State to win, Tom Izzo, blah, that's it. People will be all over that. But in the biggest moment, in the biggest spot, Ramil, well, who knows, maybe in the 3 seconds or something, he would have, there's maybe 6 seconds. Whatever it was, maybe he would have given the ball to Mark Hughes, and Mark Hughes would have made a 15-footer, and Michigan would have won it. But no, they had barely touched Ramil, and there was a foul call. And that was wild. Michigan got a break there, but those things all even out. That's the way it goes. Yeah. Dollar Bill, Willie Mitchell. He was from Detroit, did not go to Michigan. 30 for 30. I don't know if I ever saw the 30 for 30 on Ramil, but I remember, I think it was Vitale would always say, he was left on the doorstep of somebody. I don't know if that was true. Like he was a baby that was left on the doorstep somewhere, something like that. I guess I'd have to go back and check to see if that was real or not. But I kind of remember Dickie V doing that. All right, that's going to do it for today's show. Thanks so much for joining us. Join up the Maize and Blue Review so we can do this over on the Den and talk about hoops until on football until Friday. Thanks for watching, and we will just throwing out names. The Tractor. We'll see you Friday. Goodbye.